Hello, Active Worship, and welcome back to another edition of Guitar University. This is episode 2, and in this episode, we're going to talk about the Helix, why it's important for us guitarists, and how we can master it. Now, I'd like to start off by asking you this one question. Let's say you learn your favorite song on guitar. You master all the notes, you know all the tabs, and you can play it, but all you have is your electric guitar. Will you sound just like the artist did in the original recording of the song? Well, that's a foolish question. The answer is no. And that's because you're missing the amplification, the effects, such as the distortion, maybe some reverb, some delay, some chorus, tremolo. And so that's what the Helix is. The Helix is an all-in-one multi-effects pedal. And so what it does is it digitally creates all those sounds, all those effects. It even has amps built into it. So that way you can get the tones you need to sound the way you want. So let's just jump right into it. Let's learn how to master the tips and tricks of the Helix and how to get you sounding phenomenal for Sunday. First thing you'll want to do is plug it into power. That's right here. You are going to need an IEC power cable, which will go in just like that. Next, you're gonna move on to XLR out. I don't have the XLR cables on me right now, but when you show up on Sunday, they will be on platform at your station. You're going to plug in each XLR into these outputs right here. It doesn't matter which side. You're gonna plug in your 1/4 inch into the guitar input. 1/4 inch is just a fancy word for your guitar cable. So memorize what 1/4 inch means because it refers to this cable. If you are rehearsing at home and you want to listen to what your guitar sounds like through headphones, you're going to plug in a 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch adapter into the phone's output. And then you'll notice that the other side is smaller, but that is where you can plug in your headphone jack. So that way you can listen to what your guitar sounds like through headphones. If you want to connect the Helix to your computer and edit it through your desktop, you are going to get a USB Type B cable, which looks like this, to a USB Type A cable, and it will plug in to there. If you are practicing at home and want to send your Helix signal out to an amplifier, what you can do is you can do a 1/4 inch out and you're gonna go left mono. So you're gonna plug that into here and you're going to plug the other side into your guitar amplifier. And here is how you are going to tune your guitar. You are simply going to hold down this button that says Tap Tuner until you get to this menu. And then from there, you can tune your strings. You want to make sure that your strings are within both of those arrows right there. To adjust the BPM of this particular patch, you're going to hold your finger over the Tap Tuner button until you get to this menu right here. And from there, you can adjust the BPM on this knob right here. You can switch between patches by pressing the arrows over here. It will open up a menu, and then you can press the corresponding button to get to that patch. So for goodness, you can press D. Now you're in the goodness patch. To select different effects, you can simply use this knob. Simply scoot it the way that you want to move. Don't rotate it or else you will switch to a whole different effect and that will mess everything up. Hello and welcome to the Line 6 desktop interface. Now, you do not have to download the desktop interface. I think it's just easier for the sake of this video because you will see this screen on the Helix itself and you'll see these options for each of these effects on the Helix itself as well, and to adjust them is actually pretty self-explanatory. Let's just start with our basic signal chain. I'm not going to expect you as a beginner guitarist on the team to build your own patch for a Sunday and present us with the sick signal chain and effects that you made. What I'm going to do is briefly show you kind of what the signal chain looks like, so that way you just understand what it is, and I'll show you some of the effects that you can have control over or some of the effects that you can adjust. First and foremost, you have your guitar input here, and then it goes through compression. That's going to stay on. the whole time, so you don't have to worry about that. Next, we have our distortion and overdrive pedals. So they look like this. You know, they're like those little boxy sine wave symbols. And so if you were to hover over them on the Helix with your cursor, so to speak, you have some things to adjust down here. So this is my clean tone, right? If I turn on distortion, gives it a little more bite. Next is our volume expression pedal. That's always going to stay on. Don't worry about adjusting that. Next is our delay. So this is something that you can control a little bit if you want. So delay is what gives it that echo. So I'm going to strum the guitar. You can see what it means with it and then without it. And there's different types of echo. For the most part, we're going to be doing eighth notes or dotted eighth notes. So here's what an eighth note sounds like. Here's a dotted eighth note. So you can adjust accordingly depending on the song. Feedback, this is how many echoes you're going to get. So if I turn this all the way up to 100, notice what happens. It's going to go on for quite a bit. And then if you turn the mix up to 100%, that's the wetness of it. So you're going to hear less of the original strum. So you can kind of listen to my guitar. I'm going to strike the strings with my pick, but you're not going to hear that in the amp. You're just going to hear the echoes. So get a load of this. So I'm going to turn that mix down to like 35%. Now you can hear the strum. Next up, we got reverb. So reverb, so if I were to turn off delay for a second and turn off reverb, here's what my guitar would sound like without any of that. Nothing, we're just in a room. But if I turn on reverb, gives it more of like that big room feeling. And so decay, this is how much it echoes, if I can use that word. So watch this. Whereas the lower the decay, the shorter the echo. So we like to keep that around 5, maybe 5.2. Next thing you're going to want to pay attention to is the mix. So this is also the wetness. So the higher the mix, the less attack you're going to hear. So with a mix at 26%, you can hear the attack on the strum. But if I were to turn this up to 100%, see that? Didn't even hear the attack anymore. So if you're trying to really be more ambient and ethereal during a low part or very spiritual part of the song, go ahead and turn that mix up. But if you're trying to really cut through the mix, then you'd want to make your sound less wet. So you'd turn the mix down a little bit, maybe turn the decay down a little bit too. And don't worry about any of the other ones. And then next you have the amp. You're not going to adjust any of these. These are just the amplifiers. Then we got some impulse responses and some EQ. And this is your particle verb, which is also attached to your Helix. And so particle verb is basically the way that we make a pad on our guitar. So we're going to have the dwell at about 20%, mix to 100%. So without it, it sounds like this. But if I were to turn this on, it would sound like this. And I can play single notes, right? So if we're in the key of A, that's an A. This is also an A. This is also an A. You kind of hear how there's not much attack, but there's a lot of dwell. That's the basic signal chain. So, as a recap here, you learned how to set up the Helix. You also learned why it's important and why we use the Helix, and also how you can adjust all the various effects on the Helix so that you can get the perfect tone that you need for a song on Sunday.